I am, or should be, Peter Laval, and this will be, hopefully, a video doing a live tutorial of a Prim, I think, Prim style maze generator in Unity3D. So if you follow this, if you can follow this, at the end of it you should be able to generate big, flat, stupid mazes that are random, but you can get the same one twice in a row. If you mess with it, you can probably get some interesting parameters to tweak as you go. So yeah, this is using Unity 5.5. I'm using a Windows 7 computer. I understand that's not quite in vogue at the moment, but it's what I've got. And he's taking a while to start. Okay, so new project on my desktop. I was trying to debug something else. Rando Maze. There we go. And Unity's happily opening. Happily. Look at all that stuff. What was that? What's this? Oh. So let's get this all in the window, all in the frame. Come on. There we go. Okay, yeah. So this is Unity. If you don't understand what that means, you might need to start with something a bit more, I have done this before. I just haven't done it with a camera on me. So save the scene. We're going to use a behavior called Random Maze, and in a scene we're going to put it on an object, which for the sake of simplicity I'm calling Random Maze. Random Maze doesn't actually do anything yet because it's a brand new behavior. I'm also going, so the first thing I'm going to need is something to represent the sort of, well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open the random maze and add to it. I'm going to add a width and a height of the maze. So this is how many little squares left and right the maze can be. Fewer squares, smaller maze, more squares, bigger maze. I'm also going to add a span, which is how big each square is. Okay, so fewer squares, simpler maze. More squares, complicated maze. Bigger and smaller span make the thing bigger and smaller. Wow, this didn't take nearly so long when I was doing it at work with a slightly different thing and okay. Auto reformat. What do I do? 14 units long and 19 units tall, and those numbers have no particular technical importance, but for personal reasons they amuse me. So I could have some sort of do it method or generate maze method in this guy. I'm not going to do that right now because I don't see any reason. I should probably not say this because maybe in 10 minutes I'll decide there is a reason. Okay, so that's going to be our random maze, and in here it's going to go through every possible I value. Going to go through every possible H value, and then to so it's creating some object named cell ID, and it's adding it to a hash set. So cell ID is going to just be the identity or whatever of the cell. Now there's nothing in Unity that really represents that, so I'm going to create another script, or we call it a script. We could use a vector too. It would just be kind of unpleasant. So I'm going to create a cell ID with a public read-only I. I've been using I think Polish language all weekend with variable name and then type. Anyway, so this is going to be the cell ID. Each instance of this is going to uniquely identify some chunk of cell in the world, and we want to use them with hash maps. Hash set. We might want to use them with hash maps. We probably will want to use that, but that's not important. So the first thing to do is, because these are read-only, I need to provide a constructor. And now I can make instances. Well, actually that's not going to work because that needs to be public as well. Okay, so now I can make all the maze cells that make up the cell, except adding them here doesn't quite work right. It won't work right because the cells, this object, this class, pardon, needs to implement the, what does it need to do? It needs to implement hash code and equals in order to work in a hash set. For simplicity, I'm also going to implement toString. I'm going to start with that for a reason that might be obvious, but will become obvious shortly. So toString. So how do I convert this to a string representation? Well, could do something funky with -I, -j, if they're 0, making sure that it's no 0 negatives. Okay, so I'm putting it down here because now that I have these things, there's a very quick and dirty equals method that suggests itself. So turn other into a cell ID, and then return null does not equal other. So if null is not equal to other, and toString equals other dot toString, then they're equal. So if null is not equal to other and the two cells have the same string representation, they're equal. Or rather, if the two cell IDs have the same string representation, they're equal. That's actually kind of icky. And Visual Studio is reminding me that this is redundant here. So that's more compact and doesn't create the string when doing the equals. But we're going to create the string when getting the hash code. Now, it wouldn't be too complicated to write some sort of hashing function and generate our own unique hash codes for the cell ID. Maybe take the class hash and then exclusive OR it with I, and then shift that around, and then exclusive OR it with J, and then shift that around, or something. I mean, we could just exclusive OR the three of them together, and that would technically be a hash code, but the problem I've seen with that is that when I then later on try to use cell IDs for random number seeds, we end up with crap random numbers, which makes me think, oh no, these cell IDs, that probably isn't good, so I'm going to just outsource hash coding, or generation of a hash code, to toString. And that's all I need for the cell ID at the moment. So I've added to Maze all the cells, and I can do one up here. And then as a sort of work in progress, so when I run this game, which has almost no appeal whatsoever, this random maze is going to get a metric ton of little cell objects, and we can look at them in the editor, and that's about it. But it proves that we're iterating through, we're generating enough data, we're generating enough points. And there we go. They're all generated just as expected. Cool. Can this pause? No, it can only stop. Okay, neat. So these are all the cells that I now have to draw a maze in. And these are going to be like, if it's a old school maze, like something drawn on graph paper, these would be each of the little squares on the graph paper. So what do I want to do? I want to start somewhere. And because the cell IDs are just glorified identities and glorified numbers, this will be the same as the cell ID that's now in the maze cells list. So we're going to start here. Now I want to know which cells I've touched, which cells are connected to this starting cell. So I've seen every cell in this list, right? So I've seen a new hash, pardon, I can smell my dinner not really being cooked. So I've seen every cell here. And that means every cell in this can be reached from the start. So if every cell in this array can be reached from the start, where's paint? I should draw a picture. If every cell in here can be reached from the start, then so I've got this maze that starts off as 9 incredibly cool. Is that 9? Yeah, sort of. 9 incredibly cool little squares. And I'm in the start cell. Now right now only the start cell is reached, has been touched. So only he is blue. So the first thing I'm going to do is grab all cells around the start cell and then I'll select only the two that are in the list of known maze cells. There are simpler ways to do this than using a hash set, but it's just easy to think about, easy to program with the hash set. So that means that I can go from the start cell to either of these, and I can randomly draw myself a little bridge saying go from start cell to here, and then this cell becomes one of the visited ones. And I erase that, and then I re-enter the loop and I do it again. Except this time I select a random cell from the list of visited cells, so we'll pretend random is going to select this guy, and I find the cells around him that haven't been visited. I found the cells around him, then I drop S because it's already been visited. I select a random one of those and sort of link them so that now there's a path. And then I do that again. Then he becomes blue. He gets a little blue marker. Cool. So I can keep doing this again and again, and I randomly select a cell. Pretend I randomly select this one again, and I figure out what it might possibly connect to and what hasn't already been touched, and then I just connect them, and that becomes a visited cell. And then if I do the randoms again, and then I can grab him and he's part of it, and eventually all the cells here will be visited, and we'll have some sort of maze, something like that. Didn't think of it, but I'm glad I didn't draw some offensive shape. I don't think that's an offensive shape. So that's all a Prim algorithm does. That's all I think the Prim algorithm does. Well, I should really double check the names for that. Anyway, so I've now got the start cell, and so I need to do a random cell from maze. No, sorry, I need to grab a random cell from scene. I need to keep going. Ugh! This is so much harder to talk about when there's a microphone. While scene.count is less than maze.count, so while there are unvisited cells, what do? We select a random cell from maze. Now, here's the next sort of hinky bit. Unity's random doesn't have a seed value, so you won't get the same number twice, or two consecutive executions. No. So I'm going to use the system random, which lets us seed. So how do I get a random one out of a set? Well, there's actually no good thing. But how do I do this? I can pretend this So this is called an extension method, and I'm saying set.to Oh, new list set. Again, this is not the most efficient way in the world to do it. Efficiency is taking a... This is going to run like a load time. It's not exactly a sort of situation where you should be losing any any performance. And you could, but anyway, so I'm using list. I'm turning the set into a list, and I'm selecting a random one by getting the next random number and modulating it by list dot count, and that will give me a random one. I can make that a little bit more compact though, which just appeals to my eccentricities. Okay, so why did I do this the funny way I did? Well, I could get the next cell to work on like this. I could do it like that. I already did that wrong. Yeah, could do it like that. But the fun thing about extension methods is that this does the exact same thing. So I'm now selecting a random cell that has already been seen. So what do I want to do? I want to select a random neighbor. And then I want to link them together. How do I connect them? Connections between next and link. I could add, I think this will work. I could add some sort of third data. Oh no, I know what I'm going to do. Yeah. Cool. And that's going to be my link. And why don't you? Okay. Yeah. He doesn't like it because it's a pure value statement or whatever. And then I need to make sure I don't visit the linked cell, the end cell again. So, sorry. And this would potentially, this means the guy could potentially run in circles, which I don't want, so I could say if you select a link, then skip out and continue the loop. But there's nothing to stop it from repeatedly selecting a link again and again and again. Selecting the same one again and again and again. So to go back to this, go back a few steps. So if I've got just this, and I'm grabbing the next neighbor, this one, we'll say, and then I say, give me a random cell, and it grabs this one. And then I go, oh, start over again. If it then grabs this one a second time in a row, and then grabs this one a second time, hey, that's potentially a problem, because it's just going to keep doing this. Not actually too likely to happen until we get into something like this, where we've got one cell left, and it keeps grabbing a pre-existing one. So, what was that? I'm kidding myself, but the kitchen's moving. Neighbors. Neighbors. I need neighbors. Everyone needs neighbors. or a way to compute their neighbors. Let's go with hash set. This is a C# property which acts like a getter function. It's just prettier. Cool, so what's in this array? Well, that, and that, I'm not doing diagonal connections. I don't think they'll quite work right. And I'm not really interested in finding out right now. This is supposed to be a simple example. Oh, that's not going to work. That should be one. So, why isn't my format shortcut working right? Anyway, that's going to generate the neighbors. So then the next problem is, what are links? Well, there, that's links. So now he can link his little buddy, link to his little buddy, and that's a seed. That should be seed, not seed. So I want to, after that big long discussion about neighbors, I only want to keep the neighbors here. Which also exists in to-do. When I wrote this before, I used a set called to-do. Yeah. Select, so that means, and then there's got to be some version of this that cool. Okay, so remove all neighbors that have already been seen. Select a random one of remaining to be the new link. And then add a link between the two. Yeah. And surprisingly, this should work. I really hope it works. So that means we're going to start at 0, 0, we're going to keep going, and at some point we will be done. So, if this works, I will be slightly happy about it. Didn't think of that. Okay, here's a potential infinite loop. So if I keep so if I keep going, then I'm eventually going to hit a situation where I start randomly grabbing a next cell which has no valid neighbors remaining, because we've been to all of his neighbors. He's bored, he's dead, he's fully expanded. Now potentially this could loop forever. It's pretty statistically unlikely, but it could potentially loop forever. I'm leaving that loop in here because it's going to make this 30-minute video much longer than I feel it needs to be to do something here where you find fully complete. Well, what would you do? You'd copy scene and then you remove all the ones that you're totally sure are done, and then every time you hit this, you add your cell to totally done, and then loop again. Because then that introduces another thing, and maybe that done something to check for. Anyway, we should be visiting every cell now. So let's create for var cell in sorry. Cool. So I want game objects. I want visible little game objects. I'm going to use a prefab. I'm going to go back here and I'm going to create 3D object cube. Yeah, that's good. And that's going to be there. And now I've got my cute little thing . This is going to create the floor of the cell. The floors is going to be us, so the cell is going to be attached to us. The floor's local position is going to be... Could add this I'm going to add this method to cell, to the cell ID. Next is a cell ID. I could do something fancy with a conversion operator, but and I forgot the parameter when I typed that. Cool. So floor transform path, floor position, and let's name it. What's the name? What's the name? And there should be a solid grid of little tiny cubes. And it was, wasn't it? Oh no, that's not right. How did that even happen? How? Huh. It's that bit that's really weird. Okay, so I don't need this link stuff yet. That's what's going wrong. No, that's not what's going wrong. So I'm selecting a random one from scene. There we go. That's going to be it. So now it's only keeping cells that both exist in the maze and haven't been seen, which means the borders can't, which means these guys can't leak over their borders. I think. Man, that's taking a long time. Oh yeah. If I'm wrong, I'm now going to shut this video off and no one ever sees it. So... there we go. So what went wrong? So I'm selecting a scene one. Yeah, this is an edge case that I guess is not actually an edge case. So it looks like it's getting into a situation where it just keeps grabbing bad cases. Maybe. That might work. So it looks like it kept selecting cells that it shouldn't have. It kept selecting the same cell again and again and again and again. And as it selected the same cell again and again and again, it kept not finishing. I didn't think that the random number generator would do that. Obviously it's possible. Oh, what are we doing now? Oh, what was that? So that's probably... well, it's less than or equal to maze count. Yeah, I bet that was... So that might be what was actually going wrong. Yeah, that was it. Okay, so it was the less than or equal to, not the magical edge case that should never have happened. That was wrong. Hey, I wasn't completely wrong. All right, so yay! That's every possible cell visited at once. Visited in one loop. Now I need to create the cell bridges between the cells. And how do I do that, you say? Why didn't you say that? Why didn't you ask how I do that? Well, the bridge is going to be there. That's not going to work, right? Hey, that did work. So that's where the bridge is going to be located. That's where the link is going to be located. The link, I think, should be another game object. And maybe I'm going to spin it. No, I'm not going to spin it. If I was doing it, I would spin it, but it has no pedagogical value to spin it. And local position is going to be where? And now we get bridges. If we do something to link them, I'm going to create a new game object, new prefab. And I bet that little guy's going to show up, which I didn't want him to show up there. So, where are you, Mr. Link? I'm going to make you 3 times as big, but only a quarter as tall as you should be. And I'm going to call you Link. And I'm going to rotate you by 45 degrees. And I don't know if this is going to look right. Now these could be any prefab you want. Anything that is a game object will work. I think the only weird constraint you're going to run in with using this stuff in normal vanilla Unity is that you won't have nav meshes. You'll have to somehow programmatically create them. But right now, they're too big. Man, it looks cool, but it's too big. So cell's gonna be enlarged a little bit, and link's gonna be shrunk down a little bit. We're gonna run one more time. So yeah, that's my randomly generated maze. It starts there, and then goes on forever. 45 minutes. If you want a little more variety, it's fairly easy to achieve. if you want a little more. So change this to what is hash set? iCollection. Where I create the floors, that's not. So if you want a little bit, we can change the cell to cells. And then here, we let it reload. Cells becomes a initially empty array. Should not do this while listening to music because it leads to all these strange silences. There, so it's hard to tell it's hard to tell from a distance, but the little guys are just slightly lumpy. Cool. You know what I think? I think we should have slightly different links too. But unlike the cells, oh no, not exactly different that way. Haha. Link 1 is going to be a 30-degree rotation. Link 2 is going to be a 50-degree rotation. Link 3 is going to be slightly taller and at 40. I think link 1 gets to be, yeah. No clever clicks to edit the field. Should have left it as link. If you wanted to go nuts with this, you could extend the editor to do all of this stuff, to give you a button to reload this stuff when running. Or you could extend the editor, or you could extend, just do something to make the cells invisible in the inspector, and then once the editor's running, switch to using proper things, but when it's not running, use fake cells that, yeah, look at how much, a little bit of variation. Anyway, so there's a bunch of stuff you could do, there's a bunch of stuff I could do, given the nature of the project I'm working on at work. If we do end up using this, I imagine we're going to get a grocery list of little changes, but we'll probably have some ice water amongst these, and each of these will be a chunk of ice, and the penguin's got to hop from block to block without falling in the water where there are seals trying to eat it. Maybe. We're supposed to work on something fairly suitable for all ages, so I don't know if we're allowed to show animals eating each other. But yeah, that's a, what is that? That's 90 plus 52, so that's 142 lines of C#, which could be less, to generate a, yeah, that could be less. Yep. get real twitchy about the line counts. If I want to get twitchy about line counts. So it's like 150, 140, 130 something lines of C# to generate an infinite number of deterministic mazes. So each maze will be complete and that any cell can be reached from any other cell. The maze is going to be the same as long as that seed value isn't changed. So this maze will be the same as the how do I do this? Oh, that's stupid. Anyway, now this maze with 390 as the seed will always be the same. This maze with 33 will be different from the 390 maze, but the same as the 33 maze. So yeah, look at this. You got this long lump and then this little sideways Tetris block. No long lump, no little Tetris block. And no long lump, no little Tetris block. You just gonna have long lump and little Tetris block. But if so, it's going through the random numbers like a stacked deck of cards, like an ordered deck of cards, and it, whenever it needs to make a decision, it draws a card and decides what to do. So if we change the volume of the decisions, if we change the width and the height, oh please don't crash Unity, we're not going to see the same little shape. Oh, we are going to see the same little shapes. Okay, so it must create that's weird. Yeah, if I could change it to negative and just melt everything. This might not have the same. What do you know? Keep showing the same. Okay, so this area is just due to a fluke going to be stable. As we get further and further, it's going to be more. It's going to be less and less stable. But we can make huge mazes for days, and eventually, if you do it enough, you will get a maze that's just a straight line. You might get one like that. A straight line back and forth. You might get one like that. You might run into a situation where the C# random number generator has a fixed capacity for entropy. So you might suffer whatever the equivalent of a birthday attack is, where you've given it enough values that it's looped back on itself. I could go on and on, but I think if you're watching this and you like this, then I don't know, man, nag me to make more of these. I can make more mazes, but you know what I mean. Hey, thank you for watching. If you've watched, thank you for skimming and skipping through. If you skimmed and skipped through, if you're my boss, hi. Yeah.